Hello everyone, welcome to my Let's Play of the turn-based Dungeon Explorer game called Darkest Dungeon. Over the course of the next hour or so, I'm going to be looking at some of the initial gameplay, as well as examining some of the medieval and medievalist elements used in the game. So to give everyone a sense of the basic premise and plot of this game, I'm going to jump right into the opening cinematic.
Ruin has come to our family. You remember our venerable house? Opulent and imperial, gazing proudly from its stoic perch above the moor. I lived all my years in that ancient, rumor-shadowed manor, fattened by decadence and luxury. And yet I began to tire of conventional extravagance. Singular, unsettling tales suggested the mansion itself was a gateway to some fabulous and unnameable power. With relic and ritual, I've bent every effort towards the excavation and recovery of those long-buried secrets, exhausting what remained of our family fortune on swarthy workmen and sturdy shovels. At last, in the salt-soaked crags beneath the lowest foundations, we unearthed that damnable portal antediluvian evil. Our every step unsettled the ancient earth, but we were in a realm of death and madness. In the end, I alone fled laughing and wailing through those blackened arcades of antiquity, until consciousness failed me. You remember our venerable house, opulent and imperial. It is a festering abomination. I beg you, return home, claim your birthright, and deliver our family from the ravenous, clutching shadows of the darkest dungeon.
Now, that little piece of plot we just had there gives us some interesting things to start talking about with regards to the setting of this game. Darkest Dungeon is sort of set in a kind of early modern type environment. As we sort of see, there's a pistol at the end of that cutscene. However, the rest of the game is sort of this odd mix of early modern stuff, medieval elements, and sort of Lovecraftian type stuff thrown in there as well, which adds a very interesting sort of grotesque element, which is going to be sort of the focus of this Let's Play. So let's go ahead and start a new game up, and the first thing we have to do is sort of name our estate. We'll just pick the standard difficulty here. So the name we're about to pick is the name for our entire estate, and because this is for 300, I'm going to call this the Mackenzie Estate, and just go ahead and start the game up. Before we get into gameplay, there's going to be one more short cutscene, and then we will get into the gameplay.
You will arrive along the old road. It winds with a troubling, serpent-like suggestion through the corrupted countryside, leading only, I fear, to ever more tenebrous places. There is a sickness in the ancient, pitted cobbles of the old road, and on its writhing path you will face viciousness, violence, and perhaps other damnably transcendent terrors. So steel yourself, and remember there can be no bravery without madness. The old road will take you to hell, but in that gaping abyss, we will find our redemption.
So here we are in the tutorial mission for Darkest Dungeon. We've got our two default characters, a Crusader and a Highwayman, and we can already start to sort of see how this game plays a little fast and loose with medieval history. We've got a classic medieval icon, a Crusader, a religious warrior, fighting in the same party as this sort of bandit with a firearm.
Brigands have run up these lanes. Keep to the side path. The hamlet is just ahead. Dispatch this thug in brutal fashion.
So this is the combat of the game. We have our two characters versus this bandit, and it's just a turn-based game where we make our attacks against the enemy and he attacks back. Now, while this combat is going on, I want to draw your attention to the background of that this battle is taking place on. The mushrooms and tombstones and statues that make up this forest in a way sort of subvert the standard sort of trope of the enchanted forest. That's a sort of a classic medieval storytelling device. And as we saw in the video just before this tutorial began, there are sort of supernatural things that may be living in these forests.
Leave nothing unchecked. There is much to be found in forgotten places. An ambush. Send these vermin a message. The rightful owner has returned, and their kind is no longer welcome.
So pay attention throughout this playthrough of what the narrator says. In this case, he made a comment about the rightful heir having returned, which is in itself a very medieval comment. Despite this being sort of an early modern setting, the idea that the sort of the lord of the manor, the lord of the castle, has returned and he's going to drive out evildoers. It's in a funny way, given what we've already seen from the initial cutscene of how sort of otherworldly and scary this game is. This game sort of likes to subvert itself in sort of subtle little ways, like having, a holy warrior or a crusader fighting in this sort of very sort of terrible looking world. Another interesting detail that should be pointed out in the game interface itself, if you look to the bottom left and bottom right of the game screen, you'll see two figures, sort of reminiscent of portraits or religious imagery of a figure holding a sword. However, it's true to this game's sort of imagery, both figures are skeletal, and it sort of lends to that feeling of things that are old and ancient and medieval being decayed and decrepit and something that should be feared, which is something that this game really likes to drive home in terms of its imagery. In terms of gameplay itself, we can see right now in the combat the first of the large bandits has been killed, but in order to move the second bandit further forward so that he can be attacked, we actually have to continue attacking and destroy the corpse of the first bandit, which is sort of a gruesome thing to have to do, and it helps lend through the actual gameplay itself to the grotesque imagery. And it should be pointed out that that very first cinematic that we watched, the opening cutscene for this game, is about all the plot that this game has. So most of the medievalism and other imagery in this game is presented in visual form through the backgrounds, the gameplay, the combat, the characters, but not through any actual plot.
Slowly, gently.
So now the combat is over, and our brave heroes are rewarded with treasure. Some is just gold and other valuables, others are crests and deeds and things that relate to the manor. Before we finish the tutorial, we should collect this treasure as a further reward. However, again, this game likes to subvert the standard stereotypes, and the chest was trapped, and we get nothing from it, which is something that happens quite a lot in this game. It sort of defies sort of expectation, and oftentimes will punish you for doing things like exploring and interacting with certain things. Will actually be punished, and you'll take damage, or you'll lose items for doing stuff like that. It's sort of, in a sort of post-Game of Thrones world, it's that sort of gritty realism that things are trying, that medieval media is trying to push forward. So that's the end of the tutorial for this game. So that's where this segment will end. In the next segment, we'll be exploring some of the hamlet, and we'll be going on the first dungeon run into the ruins.